Shana Tova. When I agreed to give the Jonah Dvar, my first thought was, gosh, if only we found ourselves in some unusual circumstance through which to read Jonah anew. So, no surprise, I'd like to describe how the pandemic has colored my reading of Jonah. To summarize the relevant parts, God commands Jonah to go to Nineveh and cry against it for its wickedness. Instead, Jonah flees by ship in the opposite direction. After a storm forces him overboard, and he spends 3 days in the belly of a big fish, Jonah begrudgingly accepts his mission and proclaims to the Ninevites, "Another 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." Based on just those 8 words, 5 in Hebrew, the Ninevites repent and are saved by God's mercy, causing Jonah to burn with emotions so deep he wants to die. Why? A difficult question to answer. The text gives us only Jonah's brief prayer to God, which reads more like an accusation, saying, in effect, "I fled because I knew you'd be merciful and save the Ninevites. I fled because I knew you were a gracious God, slow to anger and great in love." So, why did Jonah flee and want to die when God's mercy saved the Ninevites? There are many interpretations. Early Jewish sages posited that Jonah was concerned about being a false prophet once his prophecy of Nineveh's destruction was proved wrong, as he predicted it would be. I've never found this interpretation convincing, but this year, because of the pandemic, I do find it highly relevant. A self-defeating prophecy is a prediction that prevents what is predicted from occurring. This is also known as the prophet's dilemma. If Nineveh ignores Jonah's warnings, then Nineveh is destroyed and Jonah is a failed prophet. If Nineveh heeds his warning and is spared, Ninevites will question whether the city was ever really in danger and assail Jonah for forcing them to make needless sacrifices. According to this interpretation, Jonah fled to avoid this dilemma. This dilemma arises for leaders, especially during crises, including this pandemic. Our politicians and health officials are our prophets, tasked with informing us of the actions needed and the consequences if we don't take them. These leaders have faced the wrath of millions of Americans who believe the leaders are doing too much to avoid consequences that are of too little concern. The leaders face political retribution and public and personal violence. That antagonism has affected our leaders' decisions and made them want to flee. Viewed that way, the book of Jonah can be read as a call to our leaders to accept their role and perform it well based on public need, not their personal concerns or desires. Just as the pandemic colors that reading of Jonah, it has also caused me to rethink other prophets. Generalizing, various prophets explained plagues and pestilence as caused by God's anger at our failure to create a just society. I always admired their call for social justice, but their thoughts about causation left me cold. Now that we have our own pandemic, I see that the prophets were using the plague or pestilence as a mirror with which to view their society. And when I do that with the coronavirus, I find the mirror reveals just what the prophets said it would, that the cause of our coronavirus ills is social injustice. How so? Let's first consider racism. We're all aware that the virus has been worse in Black and Latino communities than in white ones. They are more likely to get sick and more likely to die, more likely to lose jobs, and more likely to become homeless. These ills, rooted in income inequality caused by racism, are not new, but the virus laid them bare while we were all looking. We could not deny that skin color and zip code determine well-being. But racism played an earlier role as well. Despite ample warning, the U.S. was caught totally unprepared for the virus. There are many reasons for this, but one is because we saw China and the Far East, where the disease started, as other and perhaps lesser, especially given our own belief in our own exceptionalism. Last February, it was they get SARS and H1N1 and MERS, but we don't, and look at them running around in their silly masks that don't even work. Not until Italians started getting sick did the U.S. start taking this seriously, and now we're paying for our racist views. Even our coronavirus successes highlight our social ills. The federal aid at the start of the pandemic was amazing and fairly successful. But why was it the coronavirus that produced this response? Self-interest. Most everyone, including Congress, understood that COVID-19 was going to affect them personally, either through the disease itself or the economy. And so, trillions of dollars were made available to fight it. What does that response tell us about other social ills like poverty, homelessness, and climate change? It tells us that as a society, we do not believe those problems affect us, only them. That while we may love our neighbor as ourselves, we have a narrow understanding of who our neighbor is. After the massive COVID-19 response, it's clear we have the resources to fix our problems. All we lack is political will. I could go on to describe other social ills revealed by the virus, like rejection of science and history. But I'd rather finish on this surprising note. I'm optimistic. In a reverse of the prophet's dilemma, by clarifying that all we lack to address our problems is political will, the virus is helping us develop that will. To give one example, look at the amazing anti-racism movement the virus has helped launch. The virus is helping us see what we already know. Change is needed. And TBI and you and I must all take part in that change. For in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. The Ninevites can provide inspiration. Upon hearing Jonah's 5 words, all the Ninevites repented, even the cows. A bit of humor, perhaps, to drive home the point. As a country, we're not there yet, but here at TBI, we are working in ways large and small to build a better society. Consider, for example, the anti-racism efforts begun by the board, the hundreds of masks the sisterhood has sewn for the needy, the Tzedakah V'Chesed Committee's care of the sick, and the Tikkun Olam Committee's large Get Out the Vote campaign. Teshuvah won't be as quick for us as it was for the Ninevites, but it will come. And as Rabbi Tarfon teaches, it is not incumbent on you to finish the work, nor are you free to desist from it. May our fast today commit us to doing the justice work so many at TBI and across the country are doing, and may that teshuvah merit us an inscription in the Book of Life for a happy and healthy year. Gemar Chatima Tova.